How's it going, everybody? Ooh, I can still hear myself. Turn that shit off. Oof. There we go. Hearing your own reverb is not fun. Welcome, everybody. Tuesday stream. You know the deal. It's Tuesday. Can everybody hear me? I've been playing around with adjusting this audio and everything, trying to get it all crisp and shits. How was it not already following here? I know, Serial. How were you not following me? Shame. Shame. Excellent. I heard my wife was telling me the audio of my last stream wasn't that great, so I'm trying to clean that up and play with all the opening gates and closing gates and all that shit. But it's like, my problem is I never talk testing the way I do when I stream, and I feel weird trying to speak regularly when I'm testing, so it just ends up, I don't know, I just always end up feeling weird about it. So yeah, don't feel bad about letting me know if my audio or anything is off or whatnot, and I'll adjust it. My beard looks so long right now in this camera. I feel like chocolate Gandalf right now. Anyway, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Taco Tuesday Talks with Tikor. I think I missed a typo in there. Taco Tuesday Tycho or Talks with Tycho. There we go. You can thank Taylor for that little bit of alliteration, which I'm not gonna lie, I love alliteration myself, so it didn't take much for me to want to go with it. So yes, you're chocolate Gandalf. It may be yours for. So today I want to talk a little lore and also answer any questions that people have, because I get a ton of questions on Twitter about Swordsfall, and honestly, Twitter is like the worst place ever for me to have to answer stuff about Swordsfall, because more often than not, an answer is a little bit like deep, and I get tired of having to type 87 tweets. So, kind of hoping that if people have questions, they can bring them here. Yeah, not even tweet chains are enough. Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. So, as I hope everybody knows, excuse me, just had another book come out called The Bank Heist. I'm about to drop this link up in here because I think everyone should read it, and that's just that. But it stars everyone's favorite crew, the Killer Krew. And I think it's a fun little story that you'll get a sense of who they are as a crew and like what they do and how they operate, and it's kind of cute, it's kind of funny, it's a little charming. It's got a like little twist in because I like to do that kind of stuff too. So check that out for sure. $2.99. I appreciate it. Keeps the bills on, keeps the bills going, the power on. Words, yes. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about the Killer Krew. I feel like most people know about them. So for some people, this will be like a refresher. For some people, this may be like the first time you've heard about them as a whole. Though the art is everywhere. A lot of people have seen Nobaya, Alara, Navan, all that kind of stuff. They're everywhere. But the Killer Krew is basically, so the biggest thing you have to remember about the Killer Krew is Nubaya has more than just her three homies, right? So it's like Navan, Alara, and Laskrin, and the Nubaya together, right? The four of them. And then plus like Bloodhawk, her hawk. Though for Bank Heist, he's not there. He's kind of, he's a hawk, so he does what he wants to do. So he's not interested in that kind of shit. He's like, let me know when you're doing something I care about. That's how he is. But, think of it more as the Killer Krew as like your almost Star Trek live, like what do they call them? Away party, you know? And when it comes to that, she typically likes to bring her co-captains, her viceroys, whatever you want to call them. Because each of the Killer Krew actually have their own ship, they have their own personnel, they have their own squad underneath them, right? just like Nubaya has like this whole armada of Heaven's Fall underneath her. But the big thing is that Nubaya handpicked them, right? She handpicked Leskrin, she handpicked Navan, she handpicked Alara to be those like important main pillars of Heaven's Fall. Mainly because when she took it over, she kind of didn't really like where Heaven's Fall was. It wasn't the pirate armada that it was now. It wasn't gone, but it was like the spirit of what had made it have such a fearsome title, Heaven's Fall, was gone, right? And Nubaya is the kind of leader who just doesn't like that kind of stuff. She doesn't want people in her armada that can't cut the mustard. You know, he doesn't believe in having weaklings or anything like that. It's not even so much like a shitty Spartan mentality of like only the best. It's this sort of thing of like, we're here to do a thing and we're here to do the thing fucking good. So who's with me? Like, if you don't want to do the thing and do a fucking amazing, then like I'm sure there's other pirate crews you can go join, but not this one, homie. And Nubai kind of brings that out in people. So when she took over Heaven's Fall, there was a little period, because she took it over when she was 10 years old, mind you, right? Killed the old captain, and nobody was really sorry because he kind of sucked. And they're all looking at this kid who doesn't act like a kid, doesn't seem like a kid, but is obviously a kid, right? So there's like a mix of her wanting to know more about like the role before just walking in. But either way, there was like a couple year period where she was still training, learning stuff, and not so much like training on other people as if like she had something to learn, but in terms of she knew how powerful she wanted to be before she like set out as like, you know, official captain, right? But when it was time for her to really like take those reins and make Heaven's Fall something, she didn't want to just go with the old leadership, right? So she basically called all the old leadership, well, at the time, the current leadership, together, and basically was like, let me see what you got. Had him spar, like, tactics, stuff like that, and it was just like, wow, so this is why Heaven's Fall the way it is. You're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you can all get the hell out. Peace out, right? And just shook up the whole thing and wanted to have this sort of, like, pirate excellence that hadn't been around for so long. And she went from ship to ship and basically was like, show me your best, and trying to find someone, a few people really, to sort of help build Heaven's Fall into this thing that she knew it could be, right? Alara was the first one that she found, and Alara wasn't even a part of the cast, or I guess the people who are, I guess, elected to be the position, or the people they thought could be in this position, your contenders. She wasn't even in the contenders list, right? And so she's sitting there, like, and I almost imagine her sitting there bored, watching, like, these people fight and whatnot, and just, like, none of them strike her fancy. And then she looks over and sees, like, Alara in the corner, just kind of has this look. And Nubai is the kind of character that when I imagine her, when I write her, she's very perceptive, but not always in the way that I think people say the word perceptive, you know? She reads body language. Truly reads body language. She's looking to see. It's like being watched by a hawk. And if you read the Bank Heist, you'll see I kind of mention it like that. Some people just have that look, like no matter where you move, left or right, they're just watching you. They're tracking you. Like you can just tell that they're really taking you in. And she's one of those people. She doesn't take anything for granted. She really takes in someone's actions, like, and not just like mechanical stuff like, well, your footing says you're going to blah, but like truly essence of how you are, the way you carry yourself, what you're looking at. Like, she studies people, and that's what makes her scary. She doesn't even tell you what she's thinking or what she deducted, but she did. And maybe it was a good thing for you, maybe it was a bad thing. You really won't know until it's too late. And that's the thing about Nubaya, right? So she sees Alara, kind of like looks her up and looks over to the current head of the ship, and it was like, what about her? Why didn't she out here fighting? And that's when, like, I don't try to handle certain themes too much in Swordsfall, not because I want to shy away from them, but because I want to be a world where there's more people who are doing right than people who are doing wrong. Not to say that there's no isms, but those would be the exceptions, not the rule. In this case, it was them looking down on someone who didn't just have both arms like normal, right? And mind you, no one had really thought about the fact that despite the fact that Laura had one arm, she had never had trouble keeping up with anybody. And for me, like, that's always something that I've seen in society where people won't look up to recognize that people with disabilities are right there next to you, right? Which means that they were able to live their life dealing with this and still compete with you who didn't have those. You know, like, they won't recognize the strength that it takes for that, you know? And Nubai is one of those people, she doesn't take that shit for granted. So she's like, nah, like, I want to see what she does. And sure enough, Alara, like, comes out, spins out, knocks the fuck out of everybody. And Nubai is like, see, what'd I tell you? What's up, Second in Commander? Let's go. And then from then on out, it was Nubai and Alara together as they went from ship to ship to film a few more roles, right? And that's when they came across Navan. And a classic Navan way, she wasn't even there to compete because she didn't really care about being in charge. She just showed up because she knew that everyone was going to show up with their best weapons, and whoever got knocked the fuck out, she probably just take their weapons. So, like, I almost imagine, like, you have, like, the classic kid in a cookie jar look where, like, you open up the door and the kid's, like, got the cookie, like, half in his mouth and is like, except that's, like, Navan with, like, lifting someone's sword, you know? And this is that kind of shit. And, like, Nubaya, in a way, picked a cast of misfits, right? In a place where you have pirates, in a place of pirates, these were still the misfits of a misfit bunch, you know? And I just always like to write it as Nubai is someone who can... And this is what I like to remind people too, Nubai is not necessarily a hero. She's not necessarily a villain. She, along with a few other characters, probably honestly the majority of my characters, they're more gray. Because for me, I like to look at it as people who aren't necessarily invested in being on a side. They're invested in their interest. They're invested in keeping the things that they want safe. And they don't really care who you are. And I think those stories are a little more interesting. They're a little more realistic because... I don't want to get too deep in this rabbit hole, but people, we are all gray. We like to think of ourselves as wholly good and other people's wholly bad, but we are gray. It's just, we tend to be near people who paint the same shade as us, right? So as long as you stay within that same shade as people that you're around, like you always come out looking like the good guy, even if maybe you aren't. And so Nubaya is how I play that up on the sea. And because I'm kind of a philosophy guy, I generally give my characters a single word that to me gives me a sense of how I feel about them. Maybe not like a single word, but like a single phrase, right? And I try to tie it into how I see them, but it also lets me be free on how I can portray them, right? For example, for Nubaya's is unbridled freedom. And when I thought about like what a pirate was, like when I really sat down and like pulled away like all the generic TV shit and like your like colonialism shit and was really like, okay, like what is in essence a pirate? Not a class or anything like really hoped up, but like people on the sea. Why would you want to live a life on the sea? Like, you know what I mean? So I really just tried to think about what it was. And one of the things that people don't necessarily realize about piracy, even though we like to think of like John Sparrow, whatever his fucking name is, Jack Sparrow and all that whatnot, or Robinson Crusoe and that kind of shit. The earliest forms of what we call piracy were a lot of times people escaping slavery. There are so many black pirates, not Somali pirates, not Tom Cruise pirates. I mean, the kind of pirates you think of, but black. Like, there's high evidence more than not that Blackbeard was black. And that's why he was called Blackbeard. Not because of his beard, but because he was black. There's a lot of that. And there's all these tales of like, pirates weren't really searching for treasure either. Like, their biggest thing was textiles and spices, right? Because the spice must flow. And I'm kind of like, and they're like, maybe it's cheeky of me, but I started thinking about, I was like, wait, like their biggest thing that they were really hustling for were fabric and spices. I was like,
said hang black niggers and rape their children, hang black niggers and rape their children, hang
what
black
the
niggers
fuck?
and rape their children, hang black niggers and rape their children.
What is that?
Inflamed underscore anal underscore cavities said hang black niggers and rape their children, hang black niggers and rape their children, hang black niggers and rape their children, hang black.
Where is that coming from? Holy shit. What is that? What the fuck? Do you hold on. I'm in this. What the hell is this?
What?
Something is like, it's the Discord. Are you serious? Wow. That's cool.
One unvote.
I love people. The joys of being black and just fucking existing, y'all. Just existing, right? I'm over here talking about stories and someone finds the link to my Discord just to come in and spam that, right? Mind you, once I figured out what it was, which thank you for telling me it was Discord, I was just like, what the fuck is this shit coming from? All I have to do is like ban it. But like, bruh, well, what's someone has this little time in their life to do that? So whoever you are, if you're watching, I just wanted to let you know thank you. I'm gonna take a clip of this, right? And then I'm going to show it to people and I'm gonna get donations and money off of your fucking racist ass. So go ahead. Go ahead all day. I've been dealing with this stuff since I was born, my friends. Since I was born. I figured out how to not let it bother me. I figured out how to laugh at it. And now I'm at the point I'll monetize it, son. I'll make money off of all your racist ass shit. So come on. Raid me, sons. Will not break me. Not happen. Now that Discord is closed, I don't have to worry about any of that shit. We're gonna get back to what we were doing, right? Like, it's not even imaginative. That's the thing that bothers me, right? If you're gonna be racist, at least try to show your intelligence. But when you just spam it, you literally show that not only are you wrong, but you are quite literally dumber for being that racist. And that's okay if you want to show your ass. Psh, that's cool. But you literally make me look better. You automatically make me look better. And it's just like, so really it's like, are you part of my hype squad? Was that like a love message? Do you have a crush? It's okay. If you PayPal me $100, I'll give you like 30 seconds of my time. I feel like that's a fair trade. So hit me up sometime instead of just spamming my Discord. It's cute though. So anyway, I can tell so many stories because this kind of still cracks me up. Anyway, where were we? I feel like I was getting to a really good part of the story too. That's what really annoys me. I was getting to the flow of it and I was like explaining stuff, and then like someone decided to be ridiculous. Anyway, Killer Krew. That's where I was, right? Sometimes I like to imagine like little scenarios in Swordsfall where it's like somebody racist does something and they get just jumped. But then I realize like I don't even have to because like they wouldn't even get that far because like their forefathers would have gotten ruffle stomped. But anyway, but that's what it was. They probably heard that I was telling them that pirates are black and they flipped out. Sorry, but it's true though. There's quite a lot of them actually. There's a few really what is it like Attican. Um, and there's also like a whole fleet of badass black women pirates. And so I didn't necessarily base Nubai off of that, but I definitely read into it and thought about it in like sort of an imaginative way. And oh yeah, I was about to drop like the joke because I just imagined I was like, they're trading textiles and spice. I was like, that's black folks on the sea, just having fun, cruising around, like making awesome fashion, spicing up the world with good food. I don't know. So I didn't want to necessarily just make it like good for the sake of being good, but I thought about it more in terms of people being free, right, and being able to do what they need to do, and it's that sort of push and get pushed back. If you don't mess with Heaven's Fall, you're probably all right, unless you're in that kind of bourgeoisie, sort of thing, and then just kind of feel like you're always up for game, right? And it's not so much that I don't want to lean into a Robin Hood type of dynamic, but in real life piracy, that's what you had. It was like we could rob from people that are like us, that are just trying to survive, or we could rob really, really shitty people, and then no one's gonna care. So they would target slave ships and give slaves the option to be like, hey, you want to join us, or you want to keep on with this shit? And like most slaves are like, wait, like we can just be free? Like, yeah, we just on a boat. I'm sure it was like more than that. Like I know a lot of times it was more than that, but more often than not, they were targeting colonial ships, governmental ships, slave ships, stuff like that. They very rarely were just picking on the small fisherman's boat. Almost never, right? And Heaven's Fall is the same way. They're not Robin Hood style, but if they're gonna knock off someone, they may as well knock off someone that sucks. They don't they almost look at it as it's just easy that way. Then we don't have to worry about morals and is this okay? And that's right. If someone comes after us, no, this person's terrible. Oh, easy. Let's rob the shit out of them. And so, like I said, it's like the gray part of it where it's like, yeah, you shouldn't be stealing at all, but it's like, well, nobody does like the Vinsoda family, so and I find that fun to play with. And yep, trading dope Ankara fabrics, man, I'm so into Ankara. Like, I really, really need to make friends with people who are into that just so they can send me information and sources because it's super fucking awesome. Seeing like the different challenge videos over the last couple weeks, like I 100% want it. And that's the beauty of having someone like Tumo, who's from Africa, do most of my art. Like he's been incorporating a lot of this stuff from the beginning, which has been great. But I'd like to know it myself as well so I can kind of bake it into the deep parts of Swordsfall, Yo, who'd you get that pattern from? One of those crews out of Heaven's Fall. Damn, the high quality stuff. Exactly, you know what I mean? And I want that to be the sort of reason why Heaven's Fall is a sort of thing where not everybody has the same opinion. Because sometimes it depends on how you deal with them and who you are. Like, you're gonna walk in the room, ask it, and you get 5 different opinions. 3 of them might like them, 2 of them might hate them, but one of them is because of personal experience, and one of them is because they're jealous, and the other one is because, so I like the sort of dynamics because it makes it feel like a world, Rob someone rich enough to not change their lifestyle after getting robbed. Exactly. Or rob someone rich enough to change their lifestyle afterwards because that's the point. They're also that crew too. What's up, Arden? I haven't seen you in a while. I appreciate the follow, Katie. I can't believe you weren't following me before. Rob them hard enough, they become proletariats. Right? That's the good stuff. One bid for every shitty racist spam message. I appreciate it, Candy. That's the kind of stuff I love to see. Redistribution of wealth is cool and good. and also it's just one of those things where that's why I say that Swordsfall is a utopia in conflict, right? And I guess we'll get in a bit of a philosophy hole, but I don't particularly think that you can just have a society that is all good or all bad. I think dystopians are equally as ridiculous as utopias. And I think when you think about it, people tend to resist when a message becomes too overbearing. And the reason why we have some of the stuff we have in reality right now is because there's loopholes to keep us from having that sort of power, right? If you just think about what's going on right now, if we actually had the kind of power that it feels like we said we do with voting or whatnot, things would be different, right? We would have changed those things, but there's monkey wrenches that get put in front of that. So for Swordsfall, I try to imagine a world where those sort of blocks aren't there. So there's direct action and direct reactions to things, right? And that sort of dynamic and that ebb and flow is what keeps it a better world than not. Because people do try bad things, except they generally don't get away with it. And the lazy ones who do bad things really, really don't get away with it. So, in a weird way, Swordsfall only has high-level criminals, because that's what it takes to be a bad guy. Right? So, like, that's kind of what makes it a conflict. So, when shit happens, it happens on a bigger scale, because those are the only ones that manage to make it that far. Everybody else gets popped super early, because it's a place that it's proactive, you know? But in a fun way, that makes the stories that much more interesting, because I don't have to think about, like, sometimes I feel like dystopians have to be really bad to write. Like, everyone's so alone. But I imagine I get to have fun stories where, like, the community gets involved with, like, chasing down a suspect and stuff like that. And I'm looking forward to having parts in books where, you know, the Celestial Shield's walking down the street and having a conversation with people, and they know them by name. I feel like there's things you can put in there that still add that sense of thrill, but without having to feel like everybody's a terrible garbage human being and there's no point to them at all. Like, that's tiring for me. And I appreciate the bits, Sophia. I appreciate it. But yeah, so with the Killer Krew especially, I wanted each of their personalities to show a different aspect of how a gray kind of crew would be in a world that's not a utopia, but it's not a dystopia, but it's more good than bad, by far, right? And for me, it was about almost like friendship, but not the sort of friendship I think we think of in like real life, or not even like an anime One Piece style friendship. It's more of deep mutual respect and understanding of each other. Nubaya truly understands the three of her co-captains, and they understand her. So it's not always about like or about feelings of any sort. It's just about the four of them can actually see each other as humans, and not to say that that takes away who they are, but I mean they get to see them as like a human that has a list of all the stuff they are, and they see all of that and understand all of that and respect that, and that's what lets them work together so well. And I think the Bank Heist does a really good job of showing that in the little pieces of dialogue that they have, because I wanted you to see how I envisioned a crew that's like close, right? Because I don't want it to be some things I hate about modern writing right now is it feels like the only way we can have a family is if they're highly dysfunctional, like they have to hate each other, like they have to be bad to each other and someone has to betray each other. And I'm just not a fan of that. I don't understand why every sense of family has to be tinged with shit. Like, I understand that that's a real life thing, but sometimes fiction should be about transcending that stuff. So that's what I'm trying to do with the Killer Krew. They have a family dynamic, but not in a we're happy to shit in each other. But they do they are honest about how they feel about each other, right? So they do give each other little zingers, but it's not to break each other down, and it's not to shit on them or whatnot. It's an understanding of who they are and like a gentle poking at it. And I feel like that's really human, and that's like the sort of family stuff that we think of and think of like in a good way, but sometimes doesn't actually happen. You know? Writing dystopia stuff really does affect your head after a bit. Personal experience, it has to. I feel like every time I meet someone who writes hardcore dystopia, they end up being really sad. And usually they're like, well, I write the sadness. And I'm like, the self-fulfilling prophecies are a thing. Especially for the authors. There's, you know. So that's kind of where like I always challenge myself to dream better, but in a realistic way. Like, there's no reason why these things can't happen other than like anything of only magic. But like, there's no reason the community protectorate can't know the community. There's no reason why they shouldn't know the community. You know what I mean? It's that sort of thing. So rather than lean on like real life to just fill in the gaps and sort of give you an excuse to beat on it, I kind of want it to be something where like, I mean, there's going to be one part of, oh, I wish I was like lived in Tikor, but also like, maybe wanting to make those changes in your own life? I know it sounds like a little precocious, but something I think about a lot in my writing, like, because there's stuff that I've read that changed the way I looked at life, and I don't know if the author ever meant to or not, but it certainly did. So, I don't know. Trying to add to that in my own way. It can also be cathartic to externalize your demons and frame them as a world you can explore rather than a state of mind you're cursed with. And it's true. Like, and that's always where you have to, though, balance, like, if you're wish fulfillment versus externalizing, you know? And that's kind of like why I really try to make them each characters with ideals. And that way they stand on their own, even if the ideal itself starts to go into, you know, self-congratulatory. The original point was to tell stories about hope in a dark world, but at the end of the day, it was too much time spent in the whole dark world. Yeah. And sometimes the problem is you end up writing the dark so deep that it even makes it hard to see how it could be good. Or you fall in love with the dark, which is a thing too. Sometimes I'm wondering if that's because we don't make good characters that are fun, because the way we think of good or hero is a little unrealistically pious, you know? I think that's why a lot of people resonated with Captain America and the Marvel, movies lately. They do a good job of showing someone who didn't have the power to change, and in a way that gave them the will to change. And then he was given the ability to have a body to change, but even then there was still a learning period of having to understand what does it mean to do good, and that sometimes doing good means doing bad, and that's still good, even if it doesn't seem good, and there's there's a weird spiralness when it comes to heroism, why we have a number of little disorders that come from wanting to play the hero when you shouldn't. I don't know. I've been thinking about that a lot lately because it's definitely sometimes easier to write a shallow villain, but it's a lot harder to write a deeper villain. And it's a lot easier to write a deeper hero, but harder to write a shallow hero. It's a very weird thing, Thank you for the follow, the Skeleton Prayer. I appreciate it. I went a little too deep in the world building. I was spending too much time in the dark, horrible part. Oof. I feel that. I feel that. I feel like there was a whole mini troop of people that was watching for that thing earlier because they pieced out after. There was no big deal. I'm a little disappointed. They could have at least stayed and watched. My world building just turns into cynicalism with the magic. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's just what you're into. Sometimes there is something about being able to identify the parts that The parts of the story that really do entertain you, and learning how to kind of like control those, like figure out that, okay, I always love magic systems, and I know that if I do this, I'm gonna do a magic system, and like figuring out how to make that your strength, so it doesn't feel like you turn everything. Not that you ask for advice, but just putting that out to the people, because people ask me to about stuff related to that. What's up, Demore? Still here, just doing some art while I listen. Nice, nice. I think about shit way too much. I think about shit way too much. Like, that was one of those things that I had to learn to taper down. I could definitely get paralyzed in overthinking. So I find myself very critical of people now that overthink, only because like it dings so loud for me because I was that person. So I'm like, no, stop. Every time I spend an hour working on the dark, I spend an hour working elsewhere. Yeah. I generally don't like working on dark stuff. I usually only work on dark stuff when I'm specifically in a foul, dark mood. And that's about it. And that's pretty much when that happens. That's when I write like Xavian and shit like that, or the Massacre of Gainor. And I'm like, people gotta die. I think that's the funny thing about being a writer sometimes, is how like it's easy to realize like your mood can dictate what you write at a really solid way. I feel it's cathartic. It depends. When I have a whole, I call it like a brain fart. When I have like a whole brain fart I have to get out, then yeah, it feels cathartic. But if it's something that's persistent, nah, not really. Like writing for stages was cathartic because that was just an idea I had in my mind, and I was in a foul mood one day, and that was like the day to do it, Other than that, not really. I find the actual act of completing a writing cathartic, and it tends to not matter what it is. When I feel like I've told whatever story I meant to tell, like that's my jam. That's my jam. Like, it's killing me right now that people know about Swordsfall and yet like no one knows about Swordsfall. I'm sitting on like a whole novel book meta line, and I'm just waiting to be done with it so people can like actually get to the stuff I really really want to talk about. And that's a little that was one of the things that I didn't realize was going to be a thing as a writer, is like I mean, you think about how long it takes to do something, but you really don't realize what it means. That coming up with the full plot line for your series means that you know an ending that will functionally maybe not be available for people for 5 to 6 years. And you can't talk about it. And like, oh, that's hard. That's really hard. Yeah. Yeah. I have no advice for that one, other than just makes me want to write faster. Which my plan of action is, so I'm 50,000 words into the first actual legit novel, right? End of an era. My plan is in November for NaNoWriMo to double back and finish the rough draft of it, right? I don't know how long it's gonna end up being. I might have to split them into. I might have to split the first book into its own trilogy. We'll see. I don't know where I'm at yet. All I know is I'm 50,000 words in, and I'm not even like halfway through my plot line for that book. So I was like, this will be interesting. I'm definitely not fiercely screaming. I'm like, what are you scheming, Brandon? Oh, you have no idea. Nah, you have no idea. You have no idea. Like, all the really cool stuff you haven't really seen because I can't show it to anybody yet. Like, yeah. yeah, there's other things out there than Xavian. And there's like a whole main character. There's a whole main character cast. Like the Killer Krew, technically, they're like side characters. I mean, technically. I just don't treat them like side characters because for me, in my world, there are no side characters. This is someone's spotlight and this is someone else's spotlight. But for all intended purposes, the Killer Krew are side characters. Like the actual meta of the story happens around a total different set of people. That's why I have the number 2. He knows where we're going, and anytime I have to work something out, I talk to him. For me, it's like my wife. Lately, I've just been like, can I just spoil you on Swordsfall stuff? Because I need someone to talk to about it. And luckily, she's amazing. She's like, yeah. And I'm just like, let me tell you the plot of the last book. And I'm like, blah. And she's like, oh my God, that's amazing. I'm like, right. One day. Eternal suspense. Yeah. No. Wait, you have someone to talk to about it? Yeah. It's just, so like I said, I have my wife who, like, I kind of feel bad for her. She doesn't have a choice. Like, our computers are next to each other. So I usually spend half my day when she's here being like, do type it away, and then I'm like, random Swordsfall thing, blah 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 blah. Oh yeah, you were doing something. I'm sorry. And Tumo, I tell a lot of plot stuff to Tumo now. Mainly because at this point Tumo's gonna be around for like the entirety of it, so he knows a good chunk of the end plot. That way he can start working on art and stuff like that. I don't really know what we're gonna do with some of it. Like, I don't know. This is where it's like, the hard thing about what I want to do is, for me, like, my world is very tied to art. I love art. So I'm sitting here trying to figure out, past Welcome to Tikor, how I can keep doing art and I afford to pay him and me. So that's partially why you see so many like books out there and stuff like that. Stuff that I can do by myself, that I can just sit down over a weekend, pound out, send to my editor. I'm trying to focus on more on that stuff just because, like, I'm gonna be real. I'm trying to build like a revenue stream, right? Because this is all I do. So people's Patreons, the subscription on the website, stuff like that, that's literally what keeps me bills paid. And with this pandemic, but I'm a fighter, so I'm not too worried. I just make things happen. But anyway, I'll be trying to do more things on a steadily basis just to keep money coming in, because I have always tried to make sure that people get paid. And Tumo told me what his rate was to basically work full-time-ish, which is basically what he does. He basically, I don't know if I really told him about this, but he essentially does like 25 to 30 hours of like something Swordsfall related, and like he does the whole bit. Like, he researches about what he wants to do with the outfits and stuff like that. I mean, so he puts a shit ton of effort into it, and that's kind of why the art doesn't come out terribly fast, because we really do put in a lot of research, like, and the effort that Tumo puts in just the understanding of the story and everything. Because for him, it's easy for me because, like, I made it the story, right? But he came into this and into a role where I already had so much stuff done, and he's done really good at like really keeping up and understanding like the story pieces and understanding like the oomph and the underlying stuff that I'm putting in it. So as far as I'm concerned, he's like a vital part to my team, because like I can describe stuff to you. It's just not the same as seeing an art and having an artist who's actually into your story, into your world, and is excited to do art. Man, like that's the dream. So I'm just like, cool, how can I keep the shit coming in so we can do this, you know? But yeah, so I want to start stepping up more on my writing side, because that's really what I'm into, as you can tell. And don't get me wrong, like RPG and stuff is gonna happen, but there's a story in Swordsfall that I want people to know, that I'm really excited to get to now. So at least in the near future, I know that post Welcome to Tikor, Drift to Dreams, we're gonna get this anime kickstarted and all that good stuff. The shitty thing about the anime is, like, once I finish the story and like I write that out, it's kind of like, that's it. Like, you hand them the money and the art and the writing, and like So I guess I'm just spending time writing. And man, I feel like overall, I don't know how many books will be in the main story. Well, do you want? So I'm not going to spoil anything, but would you like to at least hear the summary of the first book? I'll leave that up to chat. Some people will want to just be like, I don't want to know shit about shit. They're cool ass characters that people would want to know story and oh, well, that's a lot of yeses. Okay. So, what's up, Dr. Awkward? How's it going? So the first thing you should know is the reason why my handle on like if you've played with me in games like V has or something like that is Tikor. Tikor is and has always been the main character of the Swordsfall story. I started using the name because once the game never happened, I thought it was never gonna happen, and I was just like kind of attached to the idea of the characters, and I was like, well, I'll just use them for the names of my MMO characters and shit like that, right? So the main cast, and this is like your crew that you'll get to know throughout the first book. It's Tikor and Sake, who are about to get married at the beginning of the book. And then you have Amino, who is a shadow step from Garuda. And you have Beyond the Celestial Shield, which, if you know what happens in The Longest Night, you know that, and this is like not spoiler because it's everywhere. Well, people should know this. I can always tell who's been reading the lore and who hasn't. But at the time period that you technically are at, like if you're thinking about the RPG takes place at 5 AD. Mime, the divinity of wisdom, gets killed basically at 0, right? This whole thing happens that changes the calendar. Technically, it's like 1999. I wanted to have fun with the 1999, flipping it over. Like, people are like, yeah, we're going to go to a century. And then terrible shit happens. And people are like, you know what? We're just going to start over. That was fucked. But if you remember, there's always a celestial shield with a divinity. So the story, actually, the book starts off with his name is Bayon, and he is the celestial shield from Meme. So you find out what happens with all that shit and how he managed to fail and him dealing with that kind of shit. And so yeah, I think it's most of the. And then there's Galenzi, and he is tied to Omicron. Thanks for the sub, Katie. I appreciate it. And then there is a young girl named Sheriku, who is a Dreamweaver, but does not remember who she is. And it's not like the typical kind of, oh, it's way cooler than that. And that's why I won't say anything more than that. But there's a method to the madness always. And yeah, so the first book is literally about what happens during the Day of Reckoning and the Longest Night. So the book series itself is going to take place between, literally starts off at the last day of when everything was great, takes place during the Day of Reckoning, the Longest Night, and then the book series is basically going to tell you all the shit that happens during those few years in between. So it's kind of like a prequel, but it's not a prequel. It's like stuff that's already happened, you just don't know it happened, which I guess is like a prequel, except I'm not making it up afterwards. So, and you'll get to see like how far the influence of Heaven's Fall is, stuff like that. You'll get to see about the divinity. You'll get to meet all the divinity. You'll get to see that kind of shit. You'll get to see some cool stuff with Honkin, which is cool. And then just a whole lot of cool shit that I just have really enjoyed writing, right? Because I'm a big old nerd, and it's been really fun taking the essence of some of the stuff that I've liked and ripping out some of the more gross parts and then added in like a ton of diversity and whatnot. And that's been really fun. So there's I'm gonna make this generic so it's not spoilers, but there's stuff like there's like hover bike races through like a battle. There's like a whole crazy sort of I don't remember what. No, it was from. People are gonna kind of laugh, but if you remember, well, I think it was the first Modern Warfare, right? When you have the level where you fight up through the streets in, I don't know, it was in Brazil. I don't remember, but there's something about like this sort of like fighting up, almost like you're fighting up a hill, right? And it just houses and shit like that, and it feels like anything can come out. There's like a whole fight scene running through there and shit like that, and it's just a lot of fun stuff. You get to find out what happened to the Eastern Node. So if anybody remembers that from lore, you're gonna find out how the Eastern Node is, well, no longer there. Yeah, I think it was Modern Warfare 2. Was it Modern Warfare? No, not in DC. I know the one you're talking about in DC. No, this was it was definitely not in America. Not that mission. I'll have to look it up later. It was. I just remember playing through that mission and being like, this is really cinematic, and then like you kind of get that feel from one of the Fast and the Furious movies. I don't remember which one it is. It's the one with like The Rock and them. They're in Brazil. Pretty sure it's in Brazil. Appreciate you coming by, Sophia. See you later. But yeah, so to sum up, like the first book, assuming it stays one solid book, is literally like what happens during that 24 hours when everything goes to shit, and you'll get to see it across several points of view. Like Tikor, Anamino, and Glenzie. No, not Glenzie, that one. Bayon. And all the stuff that happens. And because it was originally RPG, I mean, I've changed it around, but you can definitely see how, like, oh yeah, and like, this is how the group gets together and that kind of stuff. It just doesn't end up in some RPG format. It happens in a more novel format. And from there, what I plan to do, and I have like some rough outlines, I want to do sort of how Dragonlance kind of did some of the stuff where it's like you have like your mini trilogies that are just more like backstory about certain characters. So I'd like to get into some people like Kent Musa and Omar Khan, because I have really interesting plans for the concept of a person who acknowledges that gods are there, but at the same time is like, gods are nothing. And not out of spite, but like Kent Musa is Lex Luthor done right, in my opinion, right? Because one of the things I liked about Lex Luthor as a character, but they never do well, is that like, and I don't remember which line it was. Someone can help me out if they remember it. But there was a line where they showed Lex Luthor in more of a, like, from his perspective. And his perspective was always that this alien came from space. And he can breathe ice and shoot beams with his eyes. And he's super strong and super fast. He could destroy the whole world's military. And you worship him? Like, aren't you worried? Like, what if he decides he doesn't want to be a good guy? What if he decides he doesn't want to be your god? And that's why I always thought was interesting about Lex Luthor, in terms of like the person who objectively is like, but what if? But then no longer acts objectively about it. And that's why he's a villain. But Kent Musa decided to take more of the, like, he sees the threat of like, how can you humans sit there and like warm yourself up to beings of power, but they won't help you when you need it the most all the time. You have to, like, you know, suck up to them. Like, that's how he looks at it. So rather than go the Lex Luthor where it's like, I'm going to take over the world, or I'm going to do this, or destroy, you know, Superman, he decides to be like, fine, I will show you we don't need the gods. I will show you how great humans can be. And he's basically like, hey, like, if you're out there and if you've dealt with like science or anything like that, if they told you couldn't research this because it was heretical or whatnot, come to Prime. We research everything. And that's what Prime is. That's what Omicron is. So it's literally a city full of mad scientists. But they're mad scientists with a goal. So their goal isn't to destroy. It's just the sort of crazy experiments that people are like, that could be dangerous. And the mad scientist is like, yeah, but think of what we could come up with. And Omicron has always been that place. Has been like, oh, come on in. We love to experiment here. So they do come up with wild, crazy shit. Like, the bulk of the hover bike technology comes from Omicron, right? Same, all that kind of shit. There was one in Brazil. We were going to favela. Yeah, I think that was it. And it's like, I hate, like, I know that there's like this whole bunch of imagery when it comes to like poor people and whatnot, and I hate that. It was just mainly the close, tight feeling. So I'd like to emulate that, but without the sort of let's shit on the poor mentality, because I'm not about that life though. The one in Brazil filmed in Colombia. Is that what it was? That doesn't surprise me. Thanks for the follow, Rachel. I appreciate it. I always like Lex Luthor for the if we let him do everything, we'll grow complacent, and if one time he isn't here, we'll be screwed. Yeah. I wish they just did a better job of leaning more into that part of him. I feel like a lot of authors are scared to touch that because they like, like I think about how people acted to Thanos, right? And like if you think about it, that's almost a downside of making a villain that's too good, right? Because if you make a villain who people can see with too well, then they start feeling iffy about it. And they're like, are you trying to justify this? It's like, well, no, like some people have good reasons and they just act them out in the absolute worst way because they're hurt. And that doesn't make them good. That doesn't make them bad. It just makes them unpredictable. And that's kind of what a villain is, right? Like they're more than just a criminal. Like they're a super criminal because they have purpose. And that's what scares people. They're not just trying to steal your wallet or do some shit. Like they have plans and bitch, they are going to carry them out. And so that's why it's like there's not a lot of heroes and villains in Swordsfall. There's shades of gray. It just depends on which side you're on, you know? If you're a human who has been shit on by the divinity and you needed them when you were hurt the most and no one answered to your prayers, and you go to Omicron and oh my god, like somebody came up with a technique that can actually cure your illness, oh yeah. All of a sudden Kit Moose is your savior now, you know? So yeah, like that. Yeah, like fighting in a city with tight streets. Yeah, I kind of miss those kind of car chases too. That was what I really appreciate about Winter Soldier, because there's something about high-speed chases in like tight city streets that just hits different, you know. And I kind of miss that. Or in another perspective, the ego gets really wrapped up in it, like it mostly does with Luthor. Most adapts, I think. Yeah, I always kind of feel like that's lazy writing, though. It's really easy to write ego because it literally just means they do stupid actions, and that's people's favorite way of justifying a situation with stupidity, and that's just a little frustrating. Rather than being shown that they weren't stupid, they just got outplayed, you know. Like that would be nice to show some depth when it comes to Superman, to actually see him outplay Lex Luthor, not because Lex Luthor forgot to charge the batteries in his nuke or something, you know. It's just shit like that. But it definitely is ego where they fall in love with delivering the message rather than the message itself, you know? Lex Luthor is at his best when people treat him like the hero in his own story and not a psychopath. Yep. Doesn't mean he has to stop being a villain in everyone else's eyes. And that's the thing, you know? Like, it's what makes villains interesting. Like, when you can understand them, but still be like, but you did it wrong, you know? A lot of the medieval cities all have tight streets. You don't get that in modern cities. Yeah, well, I mean, we kind of made them to have traffic. You know, like we've designed it to not do the things that we like to see in cool movies and shit like that. So I just I'm an action guy, right? So I just have this I have this idea in my head, and I'm trying to think of like how to sanitize this so it's not spoilers because it's from the book. But I just love this idea of a sort of almost anime-ish fight through the streets, right? The heroes are running up from the bottom of this town. They have to get to the top, right? Because the elevation goes up. And the bad guys have dropped a whole bunch of their minions up at the top of the hill to make sure, like, you know, they have their exfil place guarded. And so it's the heroes trying to get up there while these guys are coming down. And like, I just imagine these like really tight quarters fights where, like, you know, because the streets are narrow, like if you think about it, like it is in that favela scene, and not because it's poor, but just because like they're meant for walking, right? Which you don't need like 2 or 3 body lengths when it just needs to be for walking distance, right? So it's just like there's not a lot of room to like move or run, so like you get in a fist fight and like you fall through someone's window, and you know it's like real tight, and like being able to hop out of a window and being on the street and not somewhere totally different. So it gives it like a frantic sense of action that I really like in my head. So I'm gonna do something like that, and definitely just take out some of the some of that shit they put in there. Even when they put in roads as just recovered horse streets. That's fair. That's fair. Recovered horse streets. Most center regions of main cities in Europe are like that. Good to know. I'll have to pull up some. It's interesting because it's like when I research stuff in Africa, for the most part, it's either open or it's extremely closed in. And they all have their own different reasons for it. So, makes it interesting. I love the idea. I love the idea of a bunch of warriors around the streets and rooftops from high up like a harbor. Yeah. Just like real fast pace, like almost like a time limit. They have to get it to the top before this thing, happens. And so like the fighting happens, but it's like nonstop moving because they're trying to get to this point, And like a little bit like the hallway scene from Old Boy. Fucked up movie, but good fight scenes. Yep, lots of tiny streets in London and Amsterdam for sure. Awesome. Places I want to visit one day. Italian cities are even more tiny alleys. Yeah, just from seeing like the pictures and stuff, it always surprises me. I'm just like, wow. Venice is a great example because it still has waterways as main traffic, which is kind of dope. Which is why, wasn't it Bourne movie that had a whole action piece? Or was it Bond? It was one of those two white British dudes movies that had something like that. A whole fight in, like, Venice. I remember action scenes more than I remember, like, certain pieces about it. Yeah, I think it was Bourne something. Yeah, I think you're right, V-Ferg. Yeah, it's like... I can't keep up with them. Bourne Ultimatum? No, is that the third one? I can't. That was Bond if we're talking Venice. Yeah, I really can't keep them straight anymore. It's been too long. Because it was like Bourne was copying off of Bond, and then Bond copied off of Bourne, only for Bourne to copy off of Bond, and I'm like, okay, just merge the movies, damn it. Just do the crossover and just give it to me and just call it a day. 00 Bourne. Did Bourne and Bond become one? Bourbond? There's a number of places that are built on hilltops that were built with streets that only 3 people could walk up and down, so they were extra defendable. That would make for some interesting stuff. Bourned. There's actually for the escape of Gainor, where the story where Obalu runs through this town. I imagine it a bit like that, where the streets are fairly narrow. That way they can get the most housing space in, obviously. So having Obalu, this giant hulking monster, go through the streets was just absolutely horrifying, because it was, from that perspective, it was like he was the town. You know what I mean? Like if you think of like a narrow alleyway and then think of a giant 7-foot creature who basically fills up the alleyway running at you full speed. Oh yeah. Bricks. Lay all the bricks. Yeah, Far From Home did a pretty sweet run around in Venice. I actually have not seen Spider-Man Far From Home yet. I'm pretty far behind on Spider-Man movies. I haven't seen the last... No, I guess maybe just... No, the last 2. Far From Home and Homecoming, I haven't seen. To be honest, once they did Peter Parker again, I was kind of like, oh, no Miles Morales? Yeah. Yeah. Anybody got any questions or anything? The way they portrayed NL and that was annoying. Why do you say that? Bro, Spider-Verse was so good. It just frustrates me that that's usually what has to happen. It has to be, you know, all like majority POCs to make sure it happens. And like I'm not I like that. It's just like, cool, then hire us more, damn it. Ah, that doesn't surprise me. I feel like in this world, everything is more racist and less laid back than we talk about. Raymond Feist wrote it into one of the Rift Saga books where all the houses were flat roofed and no windows on the ground floor, lockable only from the inside, so it's super defendable. Smart. I agree with this rankings. Spider-Verse was so good. I saw it in the cinema, I was just vibrating my seat, I bet. I bet you're just like, oh, it's not how it is. Yeah, Into Spider-Verse is the best Spider-Man movie, period. Truth. Like, it's almost obscene how good it is, right? Like, even having people tell me how good Spider-Verse was in no uncertain terms that it was amazing, it still somehow undersold how amazing that fucking movie was. Like, I was just done the whole time. I was like, this is so fucking good. What? This has nothing has any business being this fucking good. Like, you just can't come in and just break the whole fucking mold like that. Like, people got to make movies later on. Spider-Verse, like, damn. I was so glad Spider-Verse wasn't gritty and edgy. Yeah. I'm really over the gritty and edgy just to be gritty and edgy because it's like, gritty and edgy. That's what people really love. Chainsaws. Chainsaw Spidey. Just seeing the trailer of Venom was enough for me. That was it. I didn't even have to watch it. I just saw the trailer and I was like, yeah, we're good. Now we're good. I go to so much about that movie and I love it for that. Yeah, it was just good like that. This is one of those times where I wish we had more of a culture of teams that work together well, staying together to do more projects. That's one thing that I think is kind of hurting our creative industry in a weird way. Like, the team that put together Spider-Verse just knocked it out the park. So I kind of want to be like, well, can you guys do some more stuff together? Like, you obviously had a thing going on, like, that was really well. Like, why not just keep working with that? But seems like it never works like that, man. It's just like everyone scatters to the wind and then they come back and there's new people and I don't know. It's a little frustrating. The trailer matched the movie pretty much. It was just as deep. Oh god. Killer Krew silly lore question. Favorite, least favorite snacks for the road? I get down with that one. Nubaya is not picky, but she's one of those kind of people who doesn't in particularly like things that are fancy just for fancy. But like for Nubaya, she would definitely be like she'd fuck with some beef jerky or some kind, you know what I mean? Like probably something with some spice to it, some kick to it. That kind of like someone's like, "Can I have a piece?" And they're like, "Oh yeah," and they take a bite and they're just like, "Huh, how do you eat this lava?" And I can see Nubaya just being like shrugging, just being like, "I like it hot." So yeah, something like that. And Alora, she's not vegetarian. Like, just because in Swordsfall, it's not necessarily. I just never like how it feels like meat people versus vegetarians. It's just more like some people have dietary, some people just have likes. But Alara tends to just keep to veggies and things like that. She's not super into meat, so like I imagine her like having like a small baggie of like little baby carrots and stuff like that. I say that because I imagine Yvonne like poking at her at being like, "Look at Laura looking so cute," and Laura just being like hella mad, like a glance over with like a little baby carrot just sticking out her mouth, not helping her point. Navon would be gummy bears, 100%. She'd be that like cross-legged, a bag full of gummies, and just be like underneath the mask and just. Leskrin. Leskrin would be interesting because Leskrin is himself. He loves to cook, and I feel like out of everyone, he'd either be the pickiest when it comes to his snacks, or he's more likely to make the damn snacks. He's far more likely actually to show up with the person who made the snacks and like made like homemade gummies and stuff like that. And it's like carrots from like the farm that's like on his properties or on his ship or something like that. Leskrin's road snack would probably be... I almost can't imagine him snacking. I almost imagine everybody else snacking and him having his glasses on, reading his book, and just kind of like enjoying people like eating his food. Hmm. No, I don't see him being much of a snacker, actually. He's a meal kind of guy. He wants to meal. He doesn't like to snack. He's not a snacker. He wants to meal. Like, he wants to sit down, make a meal, eat a meal, because my man's gonna eat. Snacking, nah. But he'll bring the snacks. He's good like that. Plus, like, he enjoys having... He's not necessarily a people pleaser, but he likes being able to bring, like, happiness to other people, just like the little things like that, right? Yeah. And then Bloodhawk is going to take whatever he likes out of what he sees because that's who he is. Two hours of my life wasted. Agreed. Into the Spider-Verse is so wonderful. Absolutely love that movie. So good. I've heard stuff about a sequel to Spider-Verse, and I'm waiting to see what's coming from it. I've heard the same, and I'm in the same boat. I'm just gonna like wait and hope. Hope. It's so insane that they almost didn't have the entire What's Up Danger scene. Yeah, that shit would have been just fucking ridiculous. Like, if you just, it's the little things you think about, right? Or like no one would have imagined, but it's some of those scenes just, it's the stuff that catches in people's minds, right? While we're on the road trip topic, who would take control of the radio? Oh, Alara. Alara's the driver, and by default, driver gets to pick the radio. When in doubt, it's the passenger or the captain, which is Nubaya, and she always defaults it over to Alara. You don't fuck with Alara's radio. She drives, she controls the radio, you're going to live with it. Pocket carrots. Gummy bears numb. I imagine being a work snacker, not a travel snacker. Yeah, I can see that too. I imagine him being he's the cook type of snacker. He's gonna eat a little bit of this and a little bit of that with cooking to be like, let me oh yeah, you know. And by the time like food's done, you're almost full because you've been tasting and sampling your own stuff along the way so much. Feels and better, so it makes sense to me. I love how alive and visually defined every character is. I'm glad. It's something pretty much every character I have is like that. It's what I enjoy making a character for, you know? Running out of room for gunplay. That's a good problem to have. Bigger shelves, Argentum. It's especially because they were probably able to sell the whole damn movie based on that advert. It was so good. And the song was good. It hit all the right elements perfectly. Like, that was definitely when you hit something out the park, for sure, 100%. I don't think there's anything else. Am I gonna write about that? So as far as backstories, can't tell you anything about Nubaya's yet. Or Laura's. Navon's entertaining though. I can tell you Navon's. So when Navon was young, she was kind of a problem child, you could say. And her parents were like, okay, look, you have two choices. right? You can either act right and obey the rules that we have in this house, or you can leave. And they looked her dead in the eye, right? Navon only being like, 8, 9, like young, right? Was like, okay, bye, and left home, and that was it. That's your backstory. That's it. And yeah, can't tell you the screens. So yeah, 1 out of 4, not too bad. Candy, am I gonna write about that? I always have to ask myself before I say something. I'm like, wait. I was like, would this be a spoiler? I was like, It's the only problem with like dynamic characters too, because it's like you come up with a cool idea, you're like, oh yeah, that'll make a good book, and you make an outline, and you're like, cool, it's set. And now it's in your mind, you're like, oh, that's the thing I can't talk about now. Like I'm waiting for more people to finish the Bank Heist because I want to talk about it with people, but I can't. So, and it's not even like a major spoiler. I just want to I want people to enjoy that moment when they finish the story, you know. So it does make it hard when you want to talk about stuff though. There's a lot of cool stuff that's gonna happen with Heaven's Fall overall. Like Nubaya has her own story. That's why I can't talk about stuff. She has her own thing going on with the Grave Ravens are up to some shit, and you haven't really seen much about them yet, but there are basically bounty hunters that are basically after pirates, right? Because everything is bounds. Someone's gonna get mad about pirates. Not all pirates are like Heaven's Fall. Some of them are just shitty because, like I said, shades of gray, right? And yeah, so Nubaya they're called White Jackals, the organization, right? And White Jackals in particularly have taken an interest in trying to tackle Heaven's Fall. So she's dealing with that kind of shit. And yeah. I don't know when I'll be getting to that one, but I've worked out like some rough outlines for that and stuff like that. And you'll be seeing more about the Killer Krew when we get to the anime, because the anime has a sort of plot line that I've been working on, which if you read the Bank Heist is part of the same storyline. So technically the Bank Heist is your prequel to the anime. So even more reasons to read it. It'll be funny once people connect those lines. And yeah. And then like I also want to, I'm only like halfway through it, but I'm rewriting the first pirate, Lafitte, into a full proper novella, kind of like what I did with the Bank Heist. And that one's looking really good. I really enjoy the story as a whole, so that one's been really fun to rewrite. And I'm some chunk of the way through Massacre of Gaino, or like halfway through. Same thing with that. I'm rewriting that into like its own full. So that one's looking like it might be a full actual book and not a short story or a novella. So we'll see where that goes. I have so many writing projects that are like in various stages. And right now I'm just trying to prioritize like what to work on, and then like also like what I just feel like working on. Because sometimes you're like, all right, I'm working on this today, and you wake up and you're like, what if I don't though? So there's that. And people have been asking about the RPG, and I've also felt like feels like it's really easy to get ignored in this space if you're not actively yelling RPG. So I might be throwing some of the alpha chapters of the RPG book up on the website for the members here soon. So that way they can start seeing what's going on, and it won't be a super surprise for anyone who's read Summit of Kings, but you'll get to see what the rest of the stats are like, stuff like that, and show you some of the inner workings of how I have some of the classes planned. They're not as in-depth yet as Jalen's, mainly because I've just been focused on finishing the writing stuff I have going on right now. Ideally, what I'd like to do is kind of clear my plate of a bunch of different writing stuff, and obviously get like... Ideally, I'd like to have all the stuff that we currently have on the slate right now, Drift to Dreams, Welcome to Tikor, the tarot cards, get off the plate, and get the anime into production. And once I kind of get end of era to the point where it's an edit, I'm probably ready to start working on the RPG then. Well, what I think I kind of want to do, because honestly, like, book fulfillment kind of sucks, is I'd kind of like to do with what Retroverse did with their Kickstarter and just do a straight up digital, just to actually finance finishing in the book, getting some art, getting the edits and all that good shit, and maybe then do a separate one for a print run. I'd like to try that. It depends. If people are like, hell no, I won't do it, then I guess not. But if I had my druthers, that would be the way I would do it next time. Gonna have to bounce. All right, see you later, D-More. My favorite projects are the ones of surprising length, like, oh, I guess the story's only 10k words long, and then on the other end, they're like, how did they write 60k words about this? Yeah, that happens to be frequently. I'm like, what happened here? So many stories from when I was younger, folders old of old stuff. Not a bad thing to have. Not a bad thing to have at all. What's up, Grindel's Master? Random Swordsfall trivia. Oh, this is something that gets like kind of. I don't think a lot of people realize the moon on Tikor, because Tikor has a moon, but still also has two suns. Did some like digging, just kind of some like thinking, and it actually changes the wavelengths of which you see the moon. So unlike on Earth, to where you only see red moons and stuff like that every once in a while, on Tikor, the colors of the moon change with the phase of the moon. So a full moon is purple, and then it basically goes down the spectrum like that, the Roy G. Biv. So it's like violet, indigo, blue, and then all the way. So like a new moon is more or less like a blood moon, but it's like a faint blood moon because it's a new moon. But because there's two suns, it reflects that light. So the moon technically can always be seen on Tikor. So is the moon tidally locked? Yes and no. The tides on Tikor are like a mix of it from the moon, but also the second sun of Dume causes havoc. So I like to imagine it as like title locked and then title unlocked by this random ass extra sun that an evil entity was like, surprise. I'm not like a scientist, but I tried to imagine like what would happen if you had like extra solar waves and whatnot from like a foreign body that far enough away to not roast another planet or whatnot, but it's technically locked over Vinyada's orbit, which is literally why the whole southern half of Tikor is fried, because of the second sun. So stuff like that. Do you only see one face like on Earth? Yes. Which is pretty much just, from what I understood, it was like more or less what you had to do for certain stuff. This is like the part of sciences where it's like you look it up and they're like, yes, but also maybe, but also yes. I just like the fun idea of like all the cool dark side of the moon stuff. I want to play with that one day, so I just kind of did it because of that. Not gonna lie. And I'll write about why later. But if you notice, whenever you see the full moon, it's almost always violet in Swordsfall, and that's why. I specifically tell the artist when I know there's going to be moon, I'm like, by the way, full moon is violet. You're in a situation, PK? What situation would that be? It will eventually happen. Any two bodies when one is significantly heavier. they decide they realize what they have to do. It's a good trivia question. Thanks for that, Grundle. But yeah, I have the whole swords things. I'm still working on that to do fun stuff. So trivia away. There's not too much trivia I can't answer at the top of my head. Usually, if I can't, it's because it's like spoiler zone. You're more likely to get told no because it's a story thing I want to show than anything else nowadays. I'm actually kind of like, feels kind of good seeing like how far we've come with everything, you know. Okay. I'm still trying to figure out like how much I want to do with these Tycho Tuesday talks, whatever. If anybody has any other questions, I'm here for it. I think I pretty much said what I wanted to say for the week. Hoverbikes still allowed like motorbikes. Depends on the hoverbike. So the way it works in Swordsfall is... Wait, trash can start moving on its own. The way it works in Swordsfall is they're hovercraft because of a drive called a Latimer drive built by literally a guy named Latimer, right? So essentially what it is an engine that's fueled by Azurian, or alternatively can be sort of juiced up via like Hakan, via like ether energy, right? So technically you could power a small Latimer drive with yourself, like if you did the incantations right. Something big like a hoverbike would, as you would kill yourself and you still wouldn't have enough fuel, more or less, is like how that conversion is. So with hover bikes, they're as loud as the machinery needed to do whatever needs to be done. A Latimer drive itself isn't like a mechanical thing. It's more like a battery in a way, or Tesla coil-ish. It's instead of it's more of there's no mechanical, so there's nothing to actually spin or move in a Latimer drive itself. Most of like how I envision is most of what a Latimer drive is containment, since Azurian itself is technically toxic to people. Most of it is just about how can we tap into Azurian without it causing leakage and stuff like that. So most of it's just safety shit. But other than that, I like to imagine like there are like some low tech ones that are, you know, a little louder because like maybe like the safety system isn't as quiet, or you're still gonna have certain things because while it technically makes you hover, it's more by... I don't like to get too sciencey because like I'm not gonna change stuff if it's scientifically wrong just because like I don't care that much. Not gonna lie, but I imagine it more as a principle of anti-gravity rather than it being an opposing force like we would think of as a hover. So in essence, it does not have to make noise. Not to say they don't make noise, I'm sure some do, but it would be more of a manufacturing style than because it's a hover, if that makes sense, right? Like you can have a bicycle that's silent and you can have bicycles that are loud, and that's just because of how someone built it. Or like, you know, the classic, you put the can in the back of your bicycle because you want to hear it. I'm sure people do that too with hover bikes. And I try to imagine a world where like people look at it more as a tool, just like anything else. And then someone's going to trick it out, and then like someone's going to like love the sound of something. And you know, it's just, so it's one of those things where I like to imagine it's more of one of those, what you're looking for. And there's some cultural stuff in there too, like in some place like Garuda, having a silent bike is going to be like the mark of good because like they exist with nature very much. So like rolling through the forest in your fucking loud ass hover bike, that's about the best way ever to catch some bad shit from some nature spirits, right? So having like a Prius quiet hover bike would be what you would mainly see in Garuda, right? Conversely, you go to somewhere like Vinyana where it's more sand, you're really concerned with getting from point A to point B as fast as fucking possible. You don't care about sound. So because of that, they can add on stuff to add speed that might add noise and not care because it's the desert, who gives a fuck. So I think it's more like that, you know? American muscle. the Vin Diesel of sand hovercraft. Which I have like a little mini idea of like a whole like midnight club racing scene in Swordsfall. and I haven't got the art for it yet, but it's on the docket. But I watched Hyper Journey, so and I really liked Stacy. So if you've seen Hyperdrive, I have a version of Stacy in Swordsfall because I was just like, that was so badass, and I hated it. Anyway, she was badass. That kind of stuff. So muscle, I imagine like Swordsfall Vin Diesel. That cracks me up. I might play with that. Are hover bikes still allowed like motorbikes? I think we kind of talked about that. Which art piece most took your breath away the first time you looked at it? Oh man, it's hard to say because it was like a tie between Kalali of the East was just like, wow, like that one blew me away. I love that piece. But also the Ishvana one was really good, and that one blew me away too. It's hard because it's like Tumo keeps upping his game, so just when I'm like, this is it, like I can't be any more impressed, and he's like, hold my beer, and I'm like, what the fuck, my dude. So he's always just doing that kind of stuff. He's just always blowing me away. Always blowing me away. So nothing to vibrate either. I guess it depends on how you turn the energy into kinetic. Yeah, in this case, it's not necessarily turning it into kinetic. Like, it's not... And especially in a world like Swordsfall, I don't start from Earth-based first, because the reality of it is we understand what happens afterwards. And as smugly as we can talk about our science, you go back 10 years ago and we were just as smugly about something totally fucking wrong as fuck too. So I try to imagine it more in terms of understanding things that already happened and we're trying to put it into words. And we kind of make those words and laws so that we can sit there and play with those things back again. And in Swordsfall, the biggest thing is that the way that Hakan and Ether Force works is it is in itself not just a form of energy, but it's like a form of almost existence. Humans don't super understand what Ether Force is, but it is almost a separate element. And so when you use Azurian, which in itself is basically just crystallized ether, it changes what its reaction is. So rather than it being something where it's like, oh, gasoline into a combustion engine works because it basically blows them up and uses that kinetic energy, it's more like a Latimer drive connected to Azurian or ether allows you to circumvent certain things in reality. So a Latimer drive specifically, when powered in a certain way, cancels gravity. So it's not that it has to form kinetic energy to push against the ground, it's saying gravity no. And that's the magic part of Swordsfall that I want to have, but I also wanted to feel something that humans have recognized and are learning how to actively use. And constantly always surprised at how they can use Azurian and how Hakan works, and also surprised at the negatives that sometimes come at you when you don't expect it. So I hope that answers more, because like there's more stuff I want to get into when it comes to Azurian stuff like that. Not so much because I want to make it hard sci-fi, but I really want to do some things that are rooted in the reality of its own world, but I want to build what that reality is, so it makes sense. Yeah. Like, I didn't throw hover bikes in there just to be cool. Don't get me wrong, hover bike stuff is cool. It was more or less thinking about how we get to things like transportation, right? We've evolved our transportation how it is because of the land that we live in, because of the materials that we have. When you go to places where the terrain is different, so do the vehicles change. Because at the end of the day, it's just about getting us from point A to point B. We fall in love with everything else after that. But we only love cars because cars are consistent in their ability to travel, but also because its downsides don't matter enough to us immediately, like pollution and just destroying, like, in terms of terrain, you know what I mean? Like, we have to have streets for a reason. You start driving cars through forest or grass, it starts to fuck with it. And because Swordsfall is a world where it's not just humans generically in control because that's how it is, humans aren't running shit. They run the parts that they have. Nature runs the parts that they have. The animal kingdom runs the part that they have. But they were always equally powerful as each other. It's just that they do it in different ways. And I, as a philosophy dude, I tend to think that humans can't help but want to spread our wings. We have an imagination that crosses gender, it crosses race. It doesn't matter where you cut at, we're curious about shit. We can't help it. So that's how I imagined why humans spread out as far as they did, because they're curious. But they didn't move into a place, pave it over, and conquer it. They moved there, but had to figure out how to adapt to other things around them. And so when it comes to something like transportation, you cannot just run a destructive vehicle through parts of a forest. Nature lives there. Nature will fuck you up. You will not be able to get away with it. So I imagine what would have to happen if someone was like, oh my God, I'm tired of having to walk from point A to point B. Someone tries to make something that's faster and it starts destroying the land underneath them. And nature's like, bro, no. And because they did not have a choice, because they had to, and because innovation is what is it? The necessity is the invention of necessity. Well, I fucked all that up. I'm not worried about it. But anyway, my point is that because they had to invent it, there was no choice. They had to figure out a way to make transportation that worked for them, but also didn't piss off nature. And that's how hover bikes came to being. So like Latimer coming up with that technology was like, holy shit, this is what we need to be able to get from point A to point B and not piss off nature. So that made it adopted, and that made whatever shortcomings it had either be taken out over iterations or, you know, stuff like that. So that's always how I imagine in Swordsfall that the stuff they make is because it's not just humans. They have to figure out how to work alongside other forces that they don't see eye to eye with, but they don't have a fucking choice. You know, necessity is the mother of invention. I don't know why, like, my brain just, invention is the mother of something. Nah, I don't know why I was a full brain for it. Necessity is the mother of invention. Simple. If you need it, you're gonna fucking make it. Sticking a card in the rims, right? Or we did soda cans where I was. I don't know why we did soda cans, but we did. Sound travels so far across the desert too, so it'd be awesome to be able to loudly zoom through, right? Just cruising through with my 4.5. It is hard because they're all breathtaking. Like, everyone's art is just so good. Like, I'm always just blown away. Imagine the power escapes from Jet Set Radio, but better. Would be so good. Would be so good. The ball shoots from air gear from that fire guy uses amazing too. That was dope. That was dope. I'm gonna have to go back and look through that arc of air gear because that was really good now that I think about it. Cars are definitely US Global West roads thing, I suppose. I mean, you have to have like the freedom to like literally go there and build it, you know? I like that line. Nature lives there. I'm enjoying reading about Tikor so much right now. I'm enjoying it. I'm glad. I love it. I think it's a great place. I might be biased, but you know. I saw a casual mention of dragons. Are there more like long Chinese dragons and nature spirits rather than European dragon serpent monsters? They are option C, African dragons and serpents, which I don't know how people forget that there's like a whole continent there. Not to pick at you, but people are like, is it going to be west or east? And I'm like, Africa? There's like a whole continent right there. They do have stories about that kind of stuff. So every single one of my wretched ones comes from African lore. Everything does. I don't pick European stuff pretty much at all. I'll just be real. If I do, it's 100% because of something that I personally like, and then I desanitize as much as possible. Yeah. But Africa very much has its own serpents and dragons. It's just Europeans decided these aren't dragons because they violate the dragon rules, because I guess there's dragon rules. Airgare was a major influence on a thing I was writing, and maybe still might, so my brain was like, if Tikor's roller skates blades were like hovery and something, that'd be dope. That would be dope. I might actually send that to Tumo. He would really like that. That's the great thing too. Tumo's an anime nerd too, so when I'm like anime nerd moment, he's like, I got you. So, yeah. Yeah, like you definitely saw with the Land Raiders picture. That sucker was like anime as fuck. It was so good. That was probably the piece that shook me the most, because that one was just an idea come to life so perfectly. I was just like, wow. Like, you 100% nailed it. I had no idea there are dragon-like entities on the African continent. Oh, there's a whole bunch. Here's the thing, though. There's more stuff that you think is European that's African than you realize. Like, African lore in particular, just as a whole, has been colonized. It really has had whole chunks pieced out and taken. And the closer a place is to Europe, the more likely that was. People seem to forget that Carthage is in Africa. So, things like griffins, yeah, that's an African lore. And, like, there's literally stuff that shows that it predates when, like, Rome talked about it. There's a bunch of stuff like that. But some of them, like Ouroboros, that's from Africa. Stuff like that. So, there's a lot of stuff like that to where it's just they never got credit and it just gets eaten by another identity, and then we don't realize that it was originating from that source. You know? I love how every dragon specials go, dragons are worldwide, and then forget Africa every time. They're like, dragons are everywhere. We won't talk about this whole fucking continent though. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. All of southern Italian cuisine is African in origin, so yeah, for sure. Yep. And Sphinx stuff like there's a ton of stuff like that. Which is the funny thing about like when you're researching something like that, there's a lot of like, oh, this sounds familiar. Oh, that's why. But yeah, so that was one of my underlying reasons for creating the Wretched Ones, is because I wanted to give Africa that sense of respect for like dragons. Because it really kind of took me off when I realized that they had dragons and no one had really ever talked about them. So I was like, why don't we? Fuck it, I'll do it. We have plenty of disputes, Carthage and Rome, throughout their history. Yeah. Oh, Rome. Petition to give black people the title The Source, because really? Agreed. Just The Source and just bold. It's just... It wouldn't be so bad if it just there wasn't like a lack of respect. It's like, if you know you got it from X, just say you got it from X. It doesn't take away what you did. It doesn't take away your writing to say you got your inspiration from Africa. Like, come on now. Like that's what drives me, the pettiness of it. And that's kind of why I go out of my way. And I know it's obvious I go out of my way sometimes. I go out of my way to give credit when credit's due, and where I got something from or who artist it is. Because I really hate this feeling that somehow you can't give people credit. It's like you can take credit and it doesn't lose anything. I can tell you all day who drew whatever in Swordsfall. It does not take away from what I do, from what I bring to the table. Like, I know what I bring to the table. I know what they bring to the table. That's why I pay artists, because I can't draw, you know? But they're drawing like from my imagination. So I don't know. I think it's one of those things. It's they feel like they lose power somehow by giving credit for it, and I'm not here for it. Not here for it at all. Yeah. So that logo up there, Swordsfall, was made by Taylor. That awesome sexy man on the awesome sexy cyber horse is made by Emmanuel. Like, I write shit. The picture behind me of the Wanderers, that's Tumo's artwork, which is amazing. Nope, not melting. Nope, not melting at all. Does not hurt to give credit. So African lore is really interesting. It's super interesting. I wish more people got into it, because you can tell how much of it is truly about learning a lesson. And not out of malice, but like some real you need to learn this, and let me tell you about the story about how someone did this thing and good things happened, or how someone didn't do good things and bad things happened. There's like very much always like a very literal, and this is why we don't do X, and this is why we don't fuck with X. And I really appreciate that in like African lore, because it just makes it, I feel like there's always something to come away with, right? Like I feel like I read a story and I'm like, yeah, gonna be a better person now, you know? And that's something I haven't realized how much I missed. Because like as much as I used to enjoy Greek mythology, that shit got really petty, like unbelievably petty, like soap opera petty. I've literally seen people blow up because someone asked who they're at. Yeah, that shit's ridiculous. I hate that. Nah, like we know you didn't draw it. Like shit. 100% about credit where it's due. I will give credit to Ishinomori and the Kamen Rider all day long for this thing I'm doing now. Hell yeah, that's how it should be. Like, cause you know, it's like, I think people forget that sometimes as creators, you don't really know when someone sees you either. Like, sure, you get sales and stuff like that, but you don't really know who really saw your work and was really like, OMG, now I want to do something. So like, sometimes you gotta give that credit so they know when they're doing right. I feel like especially artists, because like art and writing are similar but also different. People often will have no problem telling you when there's a mistake in your writing. They'll fall over themselves to be like, found a typo, you know? But on the flip side, you could fix it. But in art, either someone likes your piece or they fucking don't. That's it. And there's sometimes nothing you can fucking do about it. It's the piece. It is what it is. I thought this is what you want. And then someone's like, Mah! And that has to feel a whole different kind of a sort of a way to sort of like put your effort and soul into something like that with no understanding if someone's going to actually like it, but you can't change it. Sure, you can like tweak some stuff if it's like here and there, but like if they just object to it as a whole, yeah, that's it. So I feel like it's even more important to give credit when credit is due, because it helps them know truly like when they've done good. Because like I think, and especially if you're hearing from some of our artists, they'd never feel like they're done with a piece. And I feel that because when I write, I feel like I'm never really done. There's just a point where I ship it and that's it. So me being able to say, hey, this piece right here, this piece right here, this piece right here, whoo, yeah, this was the shit. Like, yeah, I mean, you're guessing up too, but they know what they did for that piece somewhere. I don't. But for all I know, that could have been a new thing they tried, and they're like, I'm not sure it's gonna like it, and now they know. And there's so many different levels to that, you know. So I think giving credit is important, not just because they did it, but because they also need to know the things that are loved and why. Hold on to the things that are good, drop the shit that's not good. Growth. So Benin is where I'm planning to go on holiday as soon as this virus. Ooh, I want pictures. I'm itching. I'm itching to visit West Africa. I am anywhere. I need a guide because I don't know what I'm doing, but I need to see stuff with my own two eyes. So yeah, Anansi stories are super cool about that. Super cool about that. I love this type of stories. Thank you, Reading Rainbow and Wishbone, for having Anansi on their shows. Man, Reading Rainbow. I wonder if I can watch some of the old ones anymore. What does your process look like when you commission art? Nowadays it's pretty straightforward because I have my art team. But like, let's say, for instance, I didn't have the artist. Usually what I do, well, what I did for like Tumo, Emmanuel, and CBM, I find an art style I like, and then I go to like Pinterest or something like that. Not something like that. I do go to Pinterest. And I do an image search to find other styles similar to that. And I find their page. And I look to see what the rest of their art looks like. And if the rest of their art's similar to the piece that I liked of theirs, then I email them and I say, hey, like, what are your prices for work for hire? I would like to do an art piece or two, you know, however many. Like, so let's say I want to do an art piece, right? And I just straight up ask them, what are your prices? Because I don't like to haggle. I don't want to negotiate. I hate it, personally. And then most artists either tell you, they either give you their prices straight up because they either know what they want to price and what their menu is basically, or they might be like, tell me more, because some of them do like custom quotes just depending on like how much effort's going to be in the piece. And then basically we just go back and forth. But my big thing is I always tell them, it's for commercial, which means like I tell them that because I know I'm going to put on other stuff and I'm going to use stuff for it. So that way they can add in whatever prices they need to for commercial, because commercial is always more expensive. Don't fight it. Don't argue with it. Pay it. Respect. That's it, right? So commercial work. And then I give them whatever parameters I have. For Welcome to Tikor, it's an interesting situation where I didn't have any parameters because I didn't have to. The art is the centerpiece and the text is being molded around the art. So whatever size they want to do for a piece, whatever. And then once we've figured out the price and everything, then I give them a brief on the piece. And I generally do 4 parts: look, feel, concept, and then references. And then so the look is basically the look that like it says, the look. What like I want them to look like, and I don't get specific, but like if I have anything in particular that I know I want in it, I tell them. And I like to be general, and I like to be more about concepts. Like when it came time to do Nubaya, for instance, in the document itself under looks, I told Tumo I wanted her to have a shit-eating grin. That kind of grin that like you kind of like, but if you're on the wrong side, just pisses you off. You know, like it's something you can imagine, but it's something you can't describe mechanically. But if I tell you in that way, you're like, oh yeah. And now like Nubaya has her trademark shit-eating grin. And for feel is kind of a little more subjective, and that's something I've noticed with artists that like. Because sometimes how you draw something is not because of what it literally is. It's because of how you want it to feel, how you want it to come off, like posing or just in terms of stuff like that. So me telling them the feel that I want to get out of it helps a lot. So for like Nubaya, for the feel, it was like I wanted her to be someone who is at the same time scary but also interesting. Like she's somebody you wouldn't want to fuck with, but at the same time, you're curious, you know, like you hear there's a fight going on, it's Nubaya. As long as it's not you fighting, you're kind of like, oh, peeking around the window, like, oh, you know, stuff like that. Same thing with like Leskrin in particular. I told him, I was like, Leskrin is a really big guy, but I want him to come off like the nice uncle, but not in a weird and like kind of weak sort of way. I want him to come off as someone who understands his strength and instead chooses just to be a generally chill person. So I put that under feel. And concept is where I write like the actual information about him. Like Skrin's this guy, he's with Heaven's Fall, you know, he likes long walks on the beach, stuff like that. And then for reference, I drop if like now I have it to the point where like some of my stuff I can reference my own stuff. But usually I find reference pictures of stuff that has a similar like feel to what I'm looking for, or an actor who has a similar face structure to what I imagine or what I'd like to see. And depending on the piece, I'll send them like 1, 2, 3, depending on like how many. Like if there's something I know for a fact I want it to look like, I'll just send that one. Like Haken in particular, I knew I wanted his suit and his style to be based on how Mike Coulter looked in Luke Cage when he was all flyed up. So that when I wrote the brief for Haken, I just sent that single picture of Mike Coulter just looking dab in a 3-piece suit, and I was like, Haken. And you know, stuff like that. So I've had really good luck with it, just because like I get really deep into my characters, and I'm always trying to think of how I can break it down to people. So I just break it down to my artists, and each of the sections aren't ever more than like 2 to 3 sentences. Though I do find that most of my artists at least would prefer to have too much information than not enough information. That way it's just, if they just don't need it, fine, rather than having a question and having to track me down. It also helps that I write stuff in World Anvil articles, so I've sent Timo a lot of those too for background lore. But yeah, so I'd say the big thing is like look, feel, concept, and then references, and that's what I do for all my commissions, and it's worked great so far. So. One of the most influential people on my life was a black widow who lived in an apartment complex I was in for about a year as a kid, and she always had her door open and treated every child in the building as her own. She told us the most incredible stories, and I owe her for much of my moral code and thirst for creativity and learning that have lasted my entire life. Yeah. It's the people who make us in a good and bad way, you know? Truly. Do you go through multiple review stages? Oh, yeah. Well, it depends. Some artists do. Usually when they're new, especially, they'll do a first sketch, concept sketch, color. Almost at the point now, like, he'll do like a sketch, but he kind of just does his thing. But we've been working together for a year now, you know, and I also have zero problem being like, hey, I didn't like that. Like, originally, I didn't like the way Hawkins' dress was, and I actually had him change it, you know, so. But, like, there's a weird thing. Not weird. I've really started to appreciate it after watching a shit ton of Mythbusters lately. And I always think about how Adam would talk about how he's not really friends with Jamie, and people were like, oh, how do you work with someone that's not your friend? And I've been thinking about what that's like and what that really means. And I've been thinking it's just about like when you can recognize someone's talent and just have that respect for what they do and who they are. And it makes it really easy to say stuff that's not critical, because like you're not being critical as in they suck. You're just being critical as in this thing I don't agree with. And you can hash it out because there's that mutual respect. And with Tumo, like I know like he can kind of like, I don't have to worry about he's going to make anything that I hate. And he understands the story enough, and he asks questions whenever he feels like he's in territory he doesn't know where he's at, you know? And that's just worked out perfect. Communication goes a long way. It goes a long way. So much stuff goes bad because, like, people didn't want to communicate, or they felt weird about having to be like, well, I didn't want to tell them I didn't like this part. And it's like, well, you're going to pay them money and it's going to be something you're going to use. Like, you should feel comfortable to tell them when it doesn't hit right. You know? People need to hear the good and the bad, especially artists. And it's so hard to get people to give actual good critiques. Truth. People will shit on you and they won't give a good critique, and it's frustrating. I went to Ghana once in high school, and it strongly reminded me of Jamaica. It was really nostalgic. Yeah, I've met a number of people from Ghana, and one of them I worked with at the last job I had before I started doing Swordsfall, and she ended up quitting. She was like, everyone says America's great. She's like, I hate it here. She's like, I'm so ready to go back to Ghana. And like, you know, you always hear people are like, oh yeah, I'm gonna leave, but like, you just ever had someone who like, I don't think Africa is like a shitty place, but I also think America's pretty chill. But to have someone who's just like, yeah, you think this place is great? Yeah, no, I'm out. And I'm like, I mean, can I come to Ghana? What's it so cool? What's it like? I'm curious now, homie. What's up? Like, is this a secret I haven't known about? Is that where all the homies are? Is that where we all at? Is that Wakanda? What's up? So it was just, that kind of stuff. See you later, Argentum. Good questions. Any other questions? Because I'm pretty much done for the day, y'all. I pretty much got done talking about what I was going to talk about, so I'll answer whatever questions we have, and yeah. It's the truth sometimes. I was just waiting to find out there's a secret Wakanda. I just get my invite in the mail like Willy Wonka style. High key, maybe you want to look at a few African countries that maybe possibly in the future move to, bro. Tell me about it. Tell me about it. That'd be like a future campaign. Send Swordsfall to Africa. I mean, I would do like a whole like little tiny mini. I'd actually try to make a documentary out of it if I could. You know, because like, I love documentaries, and I feel like there's never enough good documentaries. And Like, I'm curious, like, what's the nerdy side going on, like, in parts of Africa? Like, because I know there is nerdy stuff going on. So, like, what's up? You know, I don't know. Spitballing, who knows? What's up, fam? How are you doing? Documentary time. A vlog, yeah, I would totally do a vlog. It would be entertaining. Get that learning in. Man, I was surprised. I didn't realize that people did Kickstarters for that kind of stuff, and then I saw that there was, and I'm like, oh shit. Like, I don't think I would have to have a lot. I mean, I had to look into it, but I'd have to pay like a videographer and whatnot, and then like obviously the cost of travel, but yeah. I really wanted more for the knowledge than anything else. So okay. I'm pretty much done, yo. If anybody has any last minute questions, now's your time. The plan going forward is, I think tomorrow 50-50 chance I stream. If I do, we're probably going to continue on this Transformers Devastation because that was good fun. And Thursday we're going to get back on that Thursday philosophy, and we'll talk about something philosophical times. Not quite sure what the topic is. Oh, Chili. Of course, right when I get here. I'm sorry, Chili. Rip. Yeah, I kind of moved my stream schedule, so my bad, bro. I'm trying to do it earlier because more and more people have a harder time with the late streaming times. So, you know, gotta give the people what they want. Hey, yeah, no problem. It was something I've been planning to do. It was just last year I used the morning hours for like my more productive time periods. So streaming in the morning just sounded like a terrible idea. But now I'm like peak old man, and I wake up at like 6:30, 7 a.m. all day. So by the time noon comes around, it is my damn afternoon anyway. So yeah. I think assuming this is a good time, we'll be doing more around this time. Pours out some Red Bull for Chili, right? That meat sweats. Shall we raid somebody? Oh, why is Warframe streaming? Is there Warframe stuff happening? You know your boy's a grandmaster founder of Warframe, right? I try to get on the ground floor, stuff like that, just so I can see my name and shit and be like, yeah, black people were here. They're having a community stream for PS4. We don't fucks with that. Oh, story mode base have an interview with Pikachu Lita and Mermaid Queen Jude. Oh snap. It's like 300 plus people. I'm not gonna dump you all in this shark fest like that. That's just mean. Hyper Jesus chatting. Yes, Kika. Oh no, my homeboy's on. Urban Bohemian. So we're gonna drop him off over there. Oh, there's Anno. No, you know what? We're gonna drop him over at Anno because he's gaming and he's pretty chill, and he came through on the clutch the other day with the modding. So we're gonna go over here and raid old Anno, and make sure to give him shit when you do, because we love to give people that we like shit, but like playful shit. And then if we don't like them, then we like get shit on them. So anyway, thanks everybody for coming to the stream. I'm still trying to figure out how to end these streams like an official person. So, the Bank Heist is on sale. Buy it. Let me drop off a link because y'all gonna buy my stuffs because that's so. Buy a copy of the Bank Heist or feel bad about not supporting black people. And appreciate for showing up to the stream. Show up tomorrow if I do it. For sure, Thursday. We're going to do it at noon. Yeah. Thank everybody for coming. Welcome to Tikor. See you later. Throw out a Swordsfall raid when we get over there, I guess. All right, y'all.
Still need red, purple, and white. Oh! Don't threaten me with a good time. Thank you so much, Swordsfall and Company, for the raid. To everybody who came here from Brandon's stream, hello. I am Anorian. You can call me the Game Dad. I am a variety streamer of many different things, as you can see. Right now, I am going ahead and playing some Luigi's Mansion.